Hello from Rochester, Minnesota. We're Mike and Christine Stensland, and we are honored to be part of Inheritance of Hope's e-reunion. Today we're going to share with you a few things we've learned over the past 14 years of being part of a blended family, as well as what we've learned working with other blended families through their journeys. We are a blended family of 6. So I have 2 daughters, one who's age 23 and one who's age 20.
And I have 2 biological sons, ages 22 and 18. When we were first blended, we were told that the honeymoon for blended families comes at the end.
We're almost there.
We're almost there. We were there.
Yes.
So, well, my youngest son was launched officially this fall, and we did enjoy 8 amazing days as empty nesters. And then he moved home from college to do all of his online college classes here from home. So thanks, COVID. But honestly, I guess that means that we get a second honeymoon, which sounds glorious.
Or is it a third honeymoon?
It might be. I don't know.
There we go. Well, our goal today is that after your time together, you will know that you are not alone in your blended family journey. Perhaps some of the challenges you are facing become normalized. They tend to be real patterns with blended families. We're hoping you become aware of blended family resources and tools, and that you have a sense of peace and hope for your future. Before we get started, we want to share with you our disclaimers.
Well, now that you know that we're not official Hollywood producers, and we've shared our disclaimers, we want to start out giving you a greeting from a few couples in our own community of blended families. We've met these couples along the way over the 14 years of our journey, and these are couples that live all over the U.S. that we've met along the way. We have couples from Minnesota, of course, but also Wisconsin, Texas, and Utah.
Your blended family. You are not alone.
We are Brandon and Sadie, and we blended our family of 4 1 year ago.
Dear blended family, you are not alone.
We are Kevin and Amy, and we blended our family of 4 10 years ago.
Dear blended family, you are not alone. We are Kirk
And Lori.
and we blended our family of 6 8.5 years ago.
Dear blended family, you are not alone.
We are John and Jenny, and we blended our family of 6 over 12 years ago. John has a son, so I now have a 17-year-old stepson that I have known for about 14 years. And we have 3 kids together. They are 7, 4, and 2, and then we have a final one on the way. So in a couple months, we will be a family of 7.
It's very quiet in our home.
Dear blended family, we are Lisa and
Troy.
and we blended our family of 6 7.5 years ago. I have 2 bio children.
And I have 2 bio children, and we don't have any
our
babies.
Dear blended families, you are not alone. I'm Steve and this is Shar. We're a family of 7 and we've been a blended family for 16 years.
We're going to share and then discuss a few tips that we have found helpful in a thriving blended family. Those tips are: keep your marriage relationship strong. Pursue friendship with your stepchildren. Take your time blending your family. There's no rush. Find community and resources. And finally, trust God.
As you are already likely aware, a second or subsequent marriage is really not a redo of your first marriage. No. It is a completely different thing. One major difference between step and biological families is that biological families build their foundation first, and then they add to it, usually one by one. But step families are put on a pre-built structure on a foundation that has not had time to form or solidify. And as such, the most important factor in a successful step family is to have a marriage that's strong and creates that strong foundation. When your marriage is united, the family foundation is strengthened and the whole family will eventually stabilize. That sounds great, but as it turns out, it is much easier said than done.
One of the stressors at play for blended family marriages is how strong biological ties are. It really is the biological bonds that are the strongest bonds in the family. Since my girls came into my life before Christine, I've had to work to avoid aligning myself with my daughters over Christine. I think one of the biggest lessons we learned early on is to accept that biological bonds are strong and not feel guilty that, I feel differently about my girls and probably love them more than my stepsons.
And the same holds true for me. I love my biological boys more than I love my stepdaughters. I still love my stepdaughters. And to those not living in a blended family, it actually sounds rather heartless to say that out loud. But we have yet to meet a single blended family along our journey. Well, that is not the truth. And honestly, in accepting the truth that biology does matter, we are able to name it and claim it when it causes disruption in our marriage relationship.
Yeah.
And one phrase that has helped us navigate this particular challenge, one that we say often, is that we need to remember that blended families are complex. Complexity breeds stress, and stress thickens blood. So now let's hear from the others on how biology has mattered in their families.
Biology matters. I guess it's something I think everyone needs to be aware of because we've experienced it, and I think most people we've spoke with face it to some degree.
I think that there have been a lot of conversations that we've had behind closed doors where you just have to recognize that, I had my bio-mom glasses on, and the situation that Nathan and I were, seeing with my kiddo, I was looking at from the perspective of a mom, wanting to, give her kid a warm fuzzy when maybe he needed a little discipline. I think biology is huge, and I think it's something that you don't always recognize. And sometimes it's your partner saying, "Hey, these are our house rules. We love our kids, but sometimes that lens colors some of our interactions and the way that we parent and the way that we discipline, and it's an ongoing conversation. It's been many years, and our kids have been in the same home for many years, but it's something that we still talk about on a pretty regular basis.
One of the things that we've done to make our marriage a priority is to develop the mantra and the reminder that God put us together for a reason. So despite all the challenges, despite all the headaches, and some of the things that you run up against when blending a family, God put us together for a reason, and never forget that.
1 John 4:19 has been one of our go-to verses. We love because he first loved us. So that's something that is easily forgotten sometimes in the heat of the moment.
So how do you keep your marriage a priority when there are competing forces?
It's a good question.
Mm-hmm. Oftentimes the kids really try and triangulate the other parent to get attention.
Right.
For us, intentionality, communication, and grace have been key. This got easier as the children got older. Because
Sure.
they weren't competing so much for
Right.
our time or using the same temper tantrum techniques to try and do that. But what we've been able to do is to slow down, work on improving our communication, and spend intentional time together, just enjoying one another and having fun.
So this has not been easy, nor did it happen overnight. In fact, I'd say it really has been in the last 3 years. So again, our kids are 23 down to 18.
Yeah.
That we've been really good at intentionally having date nights. So strengthening your marriage will be ongoing. It'll be part of your relationship forever. But don't give up. Remember that the honeymoon, or the second honeymoons,
We can hope.
comes at the end when you launch your final kiddo into adulthood. So here are more thoughts on the marriage as the priority.
The realization that the relationship with my kids is really independent of my relationship with my spouse. That it may have been viewed initially as being competing relationships, and feeling like if I was choosing to do something with my spouse, that I was somehow neglecting a relationship with my kids. But in actuality, it was important for me to demonstrate to my kids that it's important to have a strong foundation and a strong relationship with my spouse that ultimately would make my relationship with my kids better.
For me, the hardest part about putting our marriage first is balancing my time with my son when he's with us and focusing on my husband. Obviously, I want to give him my attention, of course, but I find that I'm overcompensating a lot. So my husband is kind of like pushed to the side when he's here, which is a big part of the time. So I have to be more intentional about balancing that for our sake, of course, but also I remind myself that it really does benefit my son too, because he then gets to see a good example of what a healthy marriage looks like and what love feels like in our home.
What has been your biggest challenge of putting your marriage first? For me, I'd say finding the time. Often we get into a rut, or as we call it, just things come up, and whether it's one priority or another, we tend to just focus on what's in front of us as opposed to getting time aside with one another.
Yes, I agree with that. Balancing for me, work and home and marriage and motherhood and stepmotherhood and just the many things that we do on a day-to-day basis. That balancing all those things, it can be difficult to carve out time to be intentional or to work on the marriage.
One of the things that we've done to make our marriage a priority is to develop the mantra and the reminder that God put us together for a reason. So despite all the challenges, despite all the headaches, and some of the things that you run up against when blending a family, God put us together for a reason, and never forget that.
1 John 4:19 has been one of our go-to verses. We love because he first loved us. So that's something that is easily forgotten sometimes in the heat of the moment.
Mm-hmm. And we try to make date nights a priority. And
we don't. Maybe it's 3 or 4 weeks since we've been on a date, and all of a sudden we can notice things, and things are a little bit off. So we go back to making date night and each other a priority, and guess what? It gets better again.
One of the things that is really important is making your marriage first priority in a blended family. We've been at this for quite some time.
We just spent a fair amount of time on marriage as the foundation in a blended family. But I really think that tip is one of the most important and also the hardest.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah.
The kids came first and then you came, and it's like putting things backwards. So
yeah, it's easy to want to put the kids first.
Yeah,
it really is.
But we do have more tips to share, so we need to move on. The next tip that we're going to provide is that you really need to pursue friendships with your stepchildren. Mm-hmm. Remember, we said we didn't necessarily have all the right answers.
Yeah.
But we know lots of wrong answers.
It reminds me of the definition of an expert, being someone who's made every possible mistake within a limited area.
So we are experts.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, one wrong story that we have heard time and time again as we work with blended families is that a step-parent comes into the family and immediately establishes their authority over the children and demands that they love them.
Yeah.
Yep. So to use a good Minnesota phrase, oofda.
It's a good Norwegian phrase.
It is a good Norwegian phrase. This does not normally go well.
To make sense of this, it's best to put yourself in the kid's shoes. When you were dating, your children likely saw you as your spouse's special friend who came and went. And then you got married, and now suddenly something that really wasn't their choice. You're now involved in their lives, probably have the same address. All the rules have changed, lifestyle, all of it might have suddenly changed. And sometimes it takes kids a while to accept that.
Culture of the whole family just shifted.
Yep.
And they didn't ask for it.
They didn't ask for it.
So just like you pursued your spouse while you were dating, you now need to slow down and pursue the trust and friendship with your stepchildren.
Mm-hmm.
It's really important to try to get to know each child on a personal level. They're each different. Some ways to do that are show interest in their interests. Even if I don't want to go to their swim meets, which I do, I go to swim meets.
Yeah.
Ask them questions about themselves. You know, we found that everybody likes to talk about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And really work on trying to find ways to make some fun memories with each child.
Came in expecting to be received as an authority figure, a parent, and just respected and well appreciated for the things that I bring to the family.
So I'm a great example of I pushed too soon. So instead of working on and focusing on relationship, I thought, hey, I got the relationship in the bag. Now we can talk about some rules, and I can tidy up the household, if you will, make everybody do chores or whatever that might be. And I really pushed that role too quickly, too soon. And in some blended families, that will never be the role of a step-parent. They will never be able to give rules. They have to 100% focus on relationship. And I've spent several years, probably about 5 years now, really focusing on my relationship with her bio kids, my stepdaughters. And we're in a good place, but we're not, perfect all the time either. I still get some backlash because of what I did to them.
Mm-hmm. So I would say that I jumped in really hard, really fast, really strong. I thought I had to be the mom in the house, and I thought I had to be perfect, and I just took over everything. I mean, I was trying to be super mom. I was a single girl, and I remember being really nervous about having to share my room and my space and my life with this whole family. And I even told you, I'm so selfish. How am I going to do this? And I gave up a ton of myself, even though he didn't ask me to. And I tried to be this hero, like I was going to save everybody and make it all better, and we're going to sing Kumbaya, and I was going to fix it, which is ridiculous because everything that happened had nothing to do with me. It was all years before in the making. And so I struggled a lot. I left the table in tears a lot. I hid in the closet a lot. I had a really hard time, and I sought the advice of well-meaning friends and family, but they had no idea what it meant to be in a step family or to be a stepmom. So their advice was not good because they couldn't relate. And it took years for us to find a group of people that did understand and that spoke the same language and understood physical custody and what's the other kind?
Legal
custody and all of that language. And just, I faltered for a long time, I'll be honest. But I've grown a ton, and I found a lot of really great resources. And I'm so lucky and blessed. And when I meet people that are step families, because there's way more of them out there than you think, a lot of people are reluctant to admit that they need help. Everybody needs help. It's hard. It's really hard. And if you think that you're not going to have issues, you're kidding yourself, because the odds are really stacked against us succeeding. So you have to work even that much harder to stay together. And here we are 14 years. Are you crying?
Oh.
14 years later, nearly empty nesters, and we've made it. And we feel for you. And I just encourage you to find people that understand.
And in terms of building relationship with my stepchildren, I have a stepson and stepdaughter. I like to call them my bonus son and bonus daughter. And I just really try to take their lead in terms of the depth of relationship they want to have with me. I try to, ask about their school day, ask about their interests. We have a bedtime ritual that we've kind of gotten into over the years. And
I'm jealous.
not pushing them to do anything that they're not comfortable with. I've never pushed them to call me mom. I've never tried to take the place of their mom. We have a great relationship with her. So that's worked really well.
That helps a lot.
I can state that one positive example that we had was I had realized that my stepdaughter Sarah had an affinity for K-pop or Korean pop music and started to listen to music with her, but also buy her music sheets because she likes to play music as well that had K-pop influence to them.
You'd also take her to Little Korea, where your dentist was, and let her go shopping in Little Korea. So that was really nurturing and a cool bonding experience for you guys. Yeah, that was neat. For me, I'd like to take Abby shopping. As we've mentioned, she loves gifts, and so anytime she has an opportunity to go shopping, she takes it. And so that was a fun chance to bond with her. Alex, he does like going to the movies, and so taking advantage of that and taking him to the movies, or invited him to watch specific movies at home that I know that he likes, so we can watch them together.
And for Matthew, he is a big animated movies fan, and we'll spend time watching movies together and even doing movie quotes. We actually have a game that we play with one another, so it's fun to just finish each other's quotes.
And if you came into the marriage, jumped right into the parental role, and then strained that relationship with your stepchildren, it's never too late to downshift your expectations, admit your misguided efforts, and ask the children if you can start over. Most children are really forgiving. It may take time, it may not be easy, but a renewed effort to build friendship and trust is a good way to begin to heal that relationship.
For sure. I think kids are way more open when you're honest with them and tell them we don't know how to do this either, but we're trying our best.
Yeah.
Right. So this next tip is take your time. This really made sense to me when Ron Deal, who's now the director of Family Life Blended, and someone you're going to want to follow, shared a food analogy with us to illustrate different ways that families try to come together. I guess apparently food is just something that speaks to me. So bear with me as I share this list, because it's a decently long list. But as I do and read these descriptions, see if any of them might remind you of attempts that you've made to bring your family together. The first one is the food processor. So as you think of the food processor, it slices and dices all the ingredients, which in this case are made up the individual family members, with rapid speed. You attempted to combine all the ingredients together, but when love doesn't happen right away, the family members are left feeling chopped up and torn to pieces. No one remains whole in this scenario. For the microwave analogy, you refused to be defined as a blended family. The ingredients are heated up in a rapid fashion so that you can become a nuclear family. The pressure cooker is where all the ingredients and spices, so the family values and the family rituals and all the preferences, are put under pressure to blend or melt together. The family is under great duress. Unfortunately, since expectations are so high, the lid often gets blown right off that pressure cooker pot. The tossed salad. So like a salad, this style throws all the ingredients into the air with no consideration as to where they might fall. Yeah, the ingredients were able to keep some of their integrity, but yet they were still expected to fit together and just taste good together. And in the blender, even though we call them blended families, the blender just takes everything in a quick circular motion This style hopes to whip all the ingredients into a fluid mixture. Ingredients are forced to lose their integrity and their uniqueness. It's not uncommon in this scenario that lumps spoil the taste of the final product, or for someone to get creamed. And finally, the crock pot. For this scenario, you utilized time and low heat. The ingredients are thrown together in the same pot, but each is left intact, giving affirmation to its unique origins and characteristics. Slowly and with much intention, the level of heat brings the ingredients into contact with one another. And as the juices begin to flow together, the imperfections are purified, and the desirability of each ingredient is added to the taste. The result is a dish of delectable flavors made up of different ingredients that gave a part of themselves to produce a wondrous creation that all can enjoy.
So I'm guessing you figured out that the crock pot method produces the most successful step families. That's the low heat, and low pressure, and time. And to build a crock pot analogy, remember that each ingredient or child will cook at his or her own pace. It's that blended families tend to need to follow the pace of the children as they're ready. And there may be one carrot in that crock pot that will just take longer to cook, and that's okay. It's best to respect each child's cook time and move at the pace that the child sets. The step parent's best tool is observation and discernment. Take cues from the biological parent and be patient as your relationship cooks. Time is on your side. There's no need to rush it.
So now on to tip 4. Find community and resources for your journey. I honestly think one of the best things that we did for our family was even prior to our marriage. We sought out resources to better understand what we might face if we blended our families. Mike is a researcher and is very analytical. So prior to even being engaged, we attended a Becoming a Smart Step Family conference by Ron Deal, who I mentioned earlier. And at that time, I joked with my friends that Mike had to do the research first before even proposing to me.
Helps make better decisions.
Yeah. In reality, it did actually. That weekend really opened our eyes and set us on a path to not necessarily avoid the pitfalls that we learned about, but we were able to recognize them and have some tools to navigate those pitfalls.
Well, there's not really a ton of resources, nor does everybody accept or understand step family life. We're able to find some good books and videos and websites to help us early in our marriage. But there was still something missing. And around the 4th year of our marriage,
I think so.
Yeah, we realized we were missing community. And so we went to our church leaders and started our own blended family group with the notion that we weren't necessarily going to have all the right answers here, but we're just in this with you. And I have to say that has been really helpful. We've just kind of done life with that group. We've been able to share with them, what were struggles, and they've shared their struggles along the way, and it's really helpful to kind of bear one another's burdens.
For sure.
So in closing, do you have any final advice?
I guess I would just say, don't think that you are too strong or be too proud to think that you can go on this journey on your own. It's difficult and it becomes challenging. And I would just encourage you to seek out the appropriate resources that are relevant for your situation.
Share what comes to mind.
I know in many scenarios, many marriages, but specifically for blended families, talk about things that you have in common. Enjoy doing things together, whether it be spiritual intimacy, physical intimacy, praying together. find the things that really unite and bond you and really dive deep into them.
I also recommend surrounding yourself with community, with other couples that are walking the same walk that you are, or a similar walk, or who have walked that path before. So trying to be in community with people at your church that have a faith, that will speak into your marriage and be for you and your marriage and your blended family. So community is a huge factor and just a huge importance in our life.
And I would also add communication onto that. With communication, seek resources. Community is a strong resource, as Lori mentioned, but I'd also look up books, references, attend conferences. There are a wealth of resources now available for blended families, and it would do you, your spouse, and your family a lot of wonderful credit to start exploring and communicating what you learned through those resources.
If I could go back and give myself one piece of advice, it would be to recognize that this is not a traditional biological family. The issues that you are going to face are very different than issues you would face in a normal first-time marriage. And what that means for us, at least, is that you need to get proactive. You need to seek out people that understand your situation, that can give you advice. You need to seek out tools to help you deal with these individual encounters that you're going to come across, and you need to be patient as you go through all of this and be committed to each other.
I think one of the really important things for us as a couple, we knew in our own dynamic and our own marriage that we really did have a great relationship, but it was some of the stressors of blending a family that really we hit bumps along the way. And it was being able to get the right kind of education specifically for blended families that really helped us along the way. And it took us, how long would you say to settle into our
16 years?
Yeah, I think we're still figuring it out, to be honest. We love learning, and we realize every year we're learning new things about our blended families. So be patient, be willing to put in the work, and it is so worth it.
You can do this. Good luck.
One helpful tool that we have used when we start any blended family groups, so we have our own blenders group that we have, but we've also met other ones and run a few.
Yeah, we were going to call it the crock pots, but that
didn't work marketing wise, right?
Yeah.
But we use what is called a genogram, which in essence, it draws out your family tree, or in a blended family, we call it the family hedge, because it goes sideways, not up and down. So we use this tool when we start groups to get to know each family in our group, and also so that the participants can get to know one another. So when we started this, we did genograms on paper and with colored pencils, and there's all these lines flying all over the place. And but I'm excited and super proud to let you know that Mike, our coworker, and our 3 oldest children, actually in our own blended family, designed and programmed a web app called blending.love that was just launched literally in October of 2020, so just a few short weeks ago.
Yeah.
And that web app makes drawings or the genogram for you, and we call it your family map. So it makes it easy and accessible for blended families and those who support them to see that family map.
Answer a series of guided questions about your current home. Previous partners' homes, and the emotional relationships in your blended family. Blending.love visualizes family from the parent's perspective and family from the children's perspective. At Blending.love, we invite you to map your blended family.
The goal for creating Blending.love was to allow blended families and those who support them to visually see what stressors are going on in that family and what the family might be feeling, to get some tips for navigating those challenges, and to share resources designed to strengthen blended families. Inheritance of Hope wanted those attending the e-reunion to have access to this tool. So for just this weekend, November 14th and 15th, 2020, you can draw your own family map for free. Just go to blending.love. All you have to type in your URL in your web browser is blending.love, no .com or anything. Select sign up. After you create an account, click the box for do you have a code from a leader, ? And then enter the code IoH 2020, all caps.
We sincerely hope that blending.love, the family map that it creates, and the tips and resources included in the web app blesses and strengthens your family.
Our last tip today is to trust God. If the tips we've already shared make you pause and think about missteps you've already taken, we're here to tell you not to worry. Our God is a God of second chances.
Amen. Thank goodness. We ourselves have made many, many, many mistakes over the past 14 years. And again, we did the research before we even blended our families, and we still made mistakes.
Yep.
And I'm sure we'll make a few more.
Yep.
Maybe just a few.
Yep.
But one thing that but we're humans, and that really just happens.
Yeah.
So what I do know for sure is that it's never too late to start doing the right thing. God has a beautiful purpose for your step family. He loves to take the difficult areas of our lives and mold and shape them into the testimony of His grace. I promise you, there are many opportunities for your family to be blended and blessed.
We'll now be joining you live to answer any questions you might have.
Hello, all. Let's see if we have any questions yet. Clearly, Hollywood producer's not on my future radar screen, so I apologize for the glitches, but I learned a new skill, I guess, sort of. So a lot of you asked about resources, and I really would recommend, not just because it's a cool web app, but if you go to blending.love, you'll find there's a whole resources tab, and we've found those resources to be useful for ourselves and then also for blended families that we walk beside and support and just do life with. I would say your biggest resource, if you are looking for somebody who we really, really appreciate and have worked with, is Ron Deal. And he's at Family Life Blended. So Family Life actually is a national organization and a Christian organization, and they actually added a whole division for blended families, which was such a blessing a couple years ago. So let's see here. We have some questions. What has helped the kids to form relationships between one another?
I would say we did a few family vacations together. I call it the Griswold family vacation, where we loaded up in a motorhome and went out to the Black Hills and then went to Yellowstone. And I think some of those were really helpful for the kids just to spend time together and to get to know each other. I think that was one thing for us that was quite helpful.
Right.
And then, I mean, they're kids, so it didn't seem to take them too long to become.
It didn't. The sibling rivalry happened right away.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, that low heat and time.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just can't force those relationships, and you can't force those relationships, and we found that following the lead of the children and their openness to acceptance versus forcing has been helpful for us and for others. The other thing is like making your own family traditions. How do you honor the past? And like we're coming up on Christmas, and so what things from the past do we want to incorporate? And if your kids are old enough, I would suggest actually having a family meeting and talking about like, what do we want to honor and what things can we do together? I'm sad to admit, but again, we haven't done everything perfect. But last year, for the first time, we took Christmas back with our family because there's lots of extended family that also want to see. So for us, we were divorced. We don't have a desk, so we actually have second houses that our kids go to. And then the grandparents that come along with all those houses. And last year we finally said, we're going to have our own primary family Christmas, and we did fondue. So we're starting a fondue tradition with our adult children that we're taking back Christmas for ourselves and just celebrating with our immediate family.
So one other comment, particularly if there's teenage kids, there's a book called In Their Shoes that came out about a year ago.
It's
on
the
a couple
resource
of years ago.
page.
It's on the resource page on the blending.love app. And Lauren talks through just kind of her experience of feeling like her family was fake before, all of her troubles, just sort of accepting everything that came out of that. So I think that's helpful. I found that pretty eye-opening. The kids really have a different perspective. Age of kid matters a lot. All right, next question.
What about where to live?
Whose house? If you can afford it, if it's possible, I recommend getting a whole new house, selling both houses and moving to another one. I moved into Christine's house initially, and I felt like I had to wrestle to get just a drawer to put my stuff in. And I always felt like there's something about being a blended family that sometimes you feel like a stranger in your own house, and us picking a house and moving to, which we did several years later, has been actually really nice. It's now a nice mix for both of us.
Right. Let's see here. Have you encouraged the blended siblings to be honest with conversations and working through challenges that come up between them? We blended over a year ago, and all of our children are teenagers. I was gonna say we do have a blended family group that we have led at our church for, I don't know, 9-10 years now. And it was really interesting as families got older, when we would discuss sort of what, the challenge of the day was, we often wrestled with, is this teenagers or is this blended families, or is this blended family teenagers? Because teenagers in and of themselves are just a challenge. So, I guess, how would you recommend?
I don't know that I have real, your kids well and think through that, but keep in mind that teenagers are in that spot where they're starting to separate and want to move out. And I have this theory that God makes them so difficult then just so we're ready for them to leave at that point. So just remember to honor that. Don't try to control it. Open up the guardrails a little bit to give them some space, try and validate where they're at. But if you step down and try and control a lot there during the teenage years, it usually goes bad. And they have a lot of emotions going on that they probably don't even know quite how to label. So
right. I do remember one time, and again, this is his teenager, this blended family. Mike was with his daughters, and he called me and he said his oldest daughter was in the pantry of the kitchen and she was just crying. And I said, she doesn't even know why. And he called me back later. He's like, she doesn't know why she's crying. I'm like, I told you that. I was a teenage girl at one point in time. So
why am I crying?
Why?
Oh
Yeah.
boy.
So, and I think also, as blended families, if you can figure out your strengths and how do you capitalize on that for just another adult in the family, especially teenagers. I think as my oldest son launched to college, Mike had a conversation with him sort of like, how do you define my role? And Mike will both tell you, like, I still can't define what a stepmom is.
Yeah.
And again, we've been here for 14 years. We lead a step families group. We meet with premarital step family couples. Like, we do a lot in the blended family world or industry. And it's a hard defined role to define, but you asked Jared what that was.
And Jared, who's really thoughtful, he came back and says, and he has a stepmom on the other side too. And he's like, it's not parent, but it's like another important adult. And so I think we decided mentor was probably the best way to describe that. And the mistake is to try and come in and replace the bio parent. Even when the bio parents passed on, the memory lives on, and make sure to just give voice to that parent, let the kids still love that parent.
And
Give
yeah, and
room
honor those memories. Yep.
and don't try to replace that. That's, as a step parent, that's not your role, unless the kid wants that. And so much of it is just about what the child wants.
Right. And I would say again, like if we can find, so Mike is way more analytical and has different skill sets. Like
Yeah.
he's handier than my son's biological dad. And so when they found ways to connect and utilize Mike's strengths and not just force being their dad on my boys, then my boys turn to Mike when they want to put on their snow tires. Because again, we live in Rochester, Minnesota. And so there is ways that we can, and like for my stepdaughters, I like shopping way more than their mother does. So they want to go do that with me or go get their hair cut. I mean, so if you can find ways that you can, use your strengths and just supplement and be another important adult who loves them, we found that is better than just forcing yourself on the kids.
I remember when Connor was 5, we had just gotten married, and Connor and my niece were both about the same age, and they were walking somewhere, and my niece looks over at Connor and says, "Hey, do you like your dad?" And he looks over at her and he says, "Who do you mean, my real dad or my fake dad?" And when I heard the story, I just chuckled because I went, it kind of feels that way to me too. It's not quite real dad. There's something odd about this relationship. And so I think it's important to know that it's however you define it. It's a different thing though. It's not, if you try and force, particularly when dads come in and try and be authoritarian, it doesn't go well.
What other questions you guys have? We could talk we could talk. I will say, if you have access to Right Now Media, Ron Deal has his Smart Step Family video series on there. And when we start groups, so we talk a lot about community, and again, when we started Blenders at our church, it wasn't because we had all the answers, it's because we wanted community too. And it's been a life-giving for us to literally do life with this group of folks, and it's grown over the last several years. So our community just gotten bigger, and it's nice to know we're not in all this alone.
There's something about sharing a story and having people, just somebody else in the group, be able to relate completely to it, where everyone else is looking at you like you have two heads, because they just don't quite get the blended family dynamics.
Right. But so I would say we started those groups, and we've done it a couple times by just literally walking through Ron Deal's video series. So we've offered it to our church. Fortunately for us, we have a church that's open to that. And we had led divorce care too. So we were already in somewhat of a I won't even say leadership role. We had just run some ministry groups. So they trusted us. And we didn't have a handbook for it. We just did it. Like, sometimes you just gotta do it. And so this coming 2021, provided we can do it, I think we're going to do a few more in our community too, just so that community members feel like they have a place to go. And so we're going to run those Ron Deal Smart Step Family videos. It does come with a workbook, and you can buy a book too. But right now, I know it's on Right Now Media, but I thought Ron said recently that you can now do Right Now Media for that particular one for free. So if you want to start your own, group, that's an easy way to do it, because you're just led through a video series that you can then talk to. And actually, one of the couples that you saw today is on the videos for Ron Deal too. So it's kind of fun. Okay, love Ron Deal's exercise of a blended family. Demonstrates how much sand, that's true, puts in the family dynamic. Yes. Other authors. So Ron Deal is one, like we said, Lauren Reitzma, from the children's perspective. She just had this book come out last year. Let's see who else. I'm looking at our things. Laura Petherbridge.
Patricia Papernow,
yeah.
who's a therapist.
And then there are there's stepmom groups on Facebook. So there's the Joyful Stepmom, I think, is a group that I follow on Facebook. So there's some online support of one another.
Gil and Brenda Stewart, they're pretty funny.
Yeah, Gil and Brenda Stewart. I honestly, the Family Life Blended site also has all kinds of podcasts of Ron Deal talking to different leaders. that would be listed. And again, blending.love has a lot of those, and those will be continually be updated.
We're planning on adding a lot more on there. I think there's 17 or 18 now. The idea was just to give you kind of a look at what's there, to open up kind of your search and see what you find, to click onto some that we thought were good.
I like it. Here's in Brenda and Gil's Restored and Remarried. There are also stepmom coaches. I'm that's a new area that I haven't actually researched, but I know it was helpful for one of the speakers that you heard today, Amy, the one who said that it's hard, and she was very honest and vulnerable in how she shared her story. But I know she had told me about some stepmom coaching resources that are out there. So the good news is there's more resources, I think, that are becoming available. But yeah, just go look them out and find community. It is really powerful to be in community with others.
Yeah, we did a weekend event, and I just remember the one couple saying, "We found our people." It was like, oh, here's other people who understand the situation. And
right.
It was just, yeah.
And some of the things that we're working on here, and again, these aren't proprietary ideas, so if you want to try it in your area, we were supposed to have the, what we know of, at least from the connections that we've made, the first of its kind camp for blended families at a local Christian camp, outdoor camp, and it was all scheduled for August, and then COVID hit. So we're still planning on doing that when it's safe. We had a lot of the programming done, but a lot of that is education of the parents, and then there's some breakouts for the children, but then a lot of it is just some experiential things to like demonstrate that we're all in the same canoe together, but if you're paddling backwards and I'm paddling forward, we're not going to get there. Like how do you teach some of those blended family lessons? And we were literally going to have crock pot meals just to go in and check and say, oh, is it cooked yet? Just to reiterate that it is time. It really does just take time and low heat.
Low heat, low pressure, and time.
Yep.
And it does take time. And really seek out those relationships with the stepkids. And expect to get rejected a few times. And that's nothing about you. That is not about you. That's about them.
Yeah. What other questions you guys have? Yeah, you're welcome. The other thing that is coming up in April, again, I feel like I'm plugging Family Life, but they're the largest organization that we know of on a Christian perspective that's having some events there. They will have a Blended and Blessed event that's an online event as well, and that's in April. So we found that helpful too, to suggest that families go visit. And also, if you're not yet married and you're just wanting resources, we highly recommend some premarital coaching too, with people who know about blended families, and blending.love. Even as a family map, if you're going to do that and you have some coaches, premarital coaches that might not be versed in blended families, even just printing out your family map on blending.love and then showing them just to say, here's the complexity. And that might start some good discussions as well for your premarital coaching. Or if you work with couples on a premarital coaching basis. I'm sure I could talk, but
I'm sure you could too.
I'm sure I could. The extrovert of the two of us, I can talk all day long.
Do you have any other thoughts and tips that come to mind from our experience?
And then just have fun. I mean, I think the other thing, that community is great because we can support each other, share resources as we find them. But one of the things that we've done in the last 2 years with our blended family group is we did progressive dinner at Christmas. And so just for the adults, and we live in a community where, it's probably 20 minutes from end to end of our town. So it's easy enough for us to get in our cars and go from appetizer to main course to dessert. And, I think there is value in just literally enjoying life together and doing life together. And so I'm working on doing a virtual progressive dinner this year with that group of people. So again, resources are great. Sharing each other's burdens is great, but also just doing life together and opening your homes and saying, we see you, we love you, we're not alone, you're not alone, we welcome you, we accept you for who you are and the complexity that you bring. So come on in, my house is dirty, but I got food. So I think that is huge for our mental health, especially now too. So we're creatively, I'm going to actually deliver things to all of our blended family groups just to let them know that they're being thought of and loved, and to hang in there during this complex pandemic life and Christmas season in a blended family.
Yeah.
How about you?
One of the things I remember Ron Deal saying that just matters a lot is that all blended families start out of loss.
Yeah.
And remember, there's that loss, and the kid's perspective is hard to get, but it's different than yours. I mean, when we were getting together, we're all excited about, we're in love in La La Land, and excited to bring this together and to right past wrongs, and to, give the kids this nice look at marriage, and really kind of to fill all that in. And I remember my daughter describing her experience of being, it was hard because I was really happy for you and wanted that to go for you, but it wasn't necessarily what I wanted for me. And it's not safe for them to say that. I mean, that's the part that's so hard. And even if you try and make it safe, they have to think carefully about what they say. And so it's hard for them to be open about that. But yeah, just remember, kids are grieving. They have that loss, and they don't necessarily have the words to put on it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
All right. I don't know that I have a whole lot more.
Okay.
I do like think about the Brady Bunch, and I don't have an Alice, and I wish I had an Alice. That might make blended family living a little easier, but the Brady Bunch definitely did not live in the real
That was
world.
not a blended family. That was, yeah.
Oh, now we're getting a bunch. How have you helped the children with empathy for one another?
Well, it's definitely been done by the bio parent mostly.
Yeah, I think you let the bio parent lead their bio children.
Yeah.
For sure.
Because as the step parent, I'm much less tolerant of my stepchildren's shenanigans than I am of my own kids' shenanigans, and probably have a better sense of what they need to. I think if you can give them a spot to talk about why they're struggling with empathy, or what it is the behavior that's going on there, figure out what that emotion and action is about. Sometimes we as adults struggle to put finger on what the emotion is. And so I think helping them figure that out and where they're feeling and just validate that emotion.
And we did one-on-one time with our kids when they were little. Like we intentionally made sure that I got to spend 10 minutes alone putting my sons to bed, or Mike spent 10 minutes alone, so that they knew that they were still connected to their parent.
And we had that special time, just so each kid knew that they mattered, and then they could open up time, and then we kept the others out, and it just kind of said, you're important. And it really depends on the kid and their age, how you
and it didn't take a lot of time. I mean, it wasn't like we were going hours on dates. I like Todd's suggestion, 2 weekly family meetings can be great, just where you ask, how are you doing? And I think that that's perfect, like having those family meetings and just being open and honest with one another, I think goes a long way.
We early on did sit down and do the whole, what do we want to make our family about, and kind of came up with the family values and made a list of that with all the kids having input on that. And I think that helped to give them a little bit of ownership and a spot where they could sort of help define that. And then some of that's just formed over time.
Right.
More and more.
And it depends on the age of the kids, for sure.
Yeah. Might not be the best thing for a 15-year-old who's quite sullen.
It's true. Again, blended family or teenager.
Right.
But we're at the end of our time, I think, but just we wish all of you the best. We hope that blending.love is a blessing to you, and that these resources and information we shared can help strengthen your families, and know that we're praying for you, and that we just, are here. If you want to get a hold of us, our contact information is in our stuff. So, here we go. Oops. Our counselor taught us to create a safe space for discussion through family meetings, include dessert, Dessert's very important. Focus
help.
on caring, honesty, respect. And I do think when you're vulnerable and admit to your mistakes, the kids
Yeah.
realize that they can be a little more honest too. So thank you all. I thank Inheritance of Hope for inviting us, and I wish you all the best, and we're praying for you.